note of that?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the September 9th Board of Agriculture meeting. And we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order here. We'll go ahead and start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Higbee, if you would please lead us.
Sure, all rise.
Let me get your flag going.
I got the little flag here in my office.
There you go.
All right. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America and to
to the
the
republic
which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we're going to go to a roll call for the board members. So if you would just signify you're here as I call out your name. Dr. Spratling. Oh, you just muted yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm here.
All right, thank you. Mr. DeFrina?
Here.
Mr. Frey?
Here.
Mr. Worthington? Woody, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Can now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Paul, no?
Muted.
Go.
Still muted, Paul.
I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Hopefully we can get through our roll call, huh? Okay. Pete Paris, please.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jim Snyder. All right. We'll put him down for absent for now, but if he shows up, we'll recognize him. Heather Lackey.
Here.
Dave Kuhn.
Here.
And Varlin Higbee.
Here.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'm Paul Anderson, and I'm here as well. We also, I see that we have our representative from the Attorney General's office is present. So we have our legal counsel, and I see Director Ott is here as well. So we're ready to roll. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Samantha, and she'll kind of give us some general housekeeping rules here.
Good morning, everyone. I get to control everybody's mic this morning. So when we have a board reporter item up on the agenda, I'm going to have everybody muted. If you have a question or anything like that, you can either raise your hand and I'm watching, or you can also hover over your name and kind of raise your hand and tell me that you have a question over there. If you're joining by the computer, you should have that option by your name to be able to raise your hand. If you're joining by phone and you have a question, you can press *9 and it will alert me that you have a question. And if you hit *9 again, you can put your hand down that way as well. So those are just some general things. But anytime you can get my attention, and we'll move forward that way.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, just one more thing. If you are done speaking, please make sure you mute yourself, because we do get a lot of feedback, or we can get a lot of background noise that'll interfere. But Samantha is going to have control, so she might mute you yourself or herself. So we're going to go ahead and go into item 2, which is public comment. And what we'll do is open this up for any public comment. It is 3 minutes. We do ask that you be respectful, direct your comments to the board as a whole. But we're ready for public comment. Samantha, do we have any?
No, sir.
Why don't we give them just a few extra seconds here in case someone's trying to draw your attention.
We
Nothing?
are good. Nothing.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll move on to item number 3, the minutes. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to review those. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments in regard to the meetings, if the meeting minutes for June 3rd? If we don't,
Mr. Chairman.
Let me have people on phones and the computer at the same time, and that makes some feedback. Who do we got going? Raise your hand if that was you, or if I can't see you, hit *9.
I think Dr. Spratling was speaking.
There you go, Dr. Spratling.
No, I just moved to accept the minutes.
Okay. We have a motion made by Dr. Spratling. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And that was Mr. Worthington.
That is correct for the,
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 4, Director's Report with Director Ott.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, members of the board, Chairman Anderson. Thank you so much for listening to my report today. I'm going to keep it very brief. Each of the divisions have very extensive reports for you on program activities, so I'm just going to cover a few overarching items. I wanted to just touch briefly on COVID response currently with the Department of Agriculture. Our offices are still closed to the public, except for some small activities such as pest control operator testing and those activities. We are still on a work status. That's for all divisions working from home, unless that you are accomplishing a essential service or an inspection activity to keep industries moving. So we've come to a bit of a period where things are not changing all of the time. It was quite challenging there for the first couple of months. I feel like we were changing every 3 weeks, but we seem to have leveled out a little bit now, and we are on that work from home status unless staff are accomplishing specific activities related to industry. We had done quite a bit of work on the federal level when it came to funding for the state and funding for our industries. But as you all aware from the news, that activity has ceased somewhat as the federal government has sort of ceased somewhat. And there's a lot of conversations going around about the next funding packages and about the next fiscal year budget. And so much of that work is in a wait and see status at this point in time. I'm sure that our division administrators are going to be going over this in their presentations, but I did, as board members, want to also, when it came to COVID activities, to please reach out to your communities. And the Department of Agriculture has some funding opportunities out there for the agriculture industry that we would really love to see more applications. We would really love to see more of our farmers and ranchers and processors and distributors take advantage of those funding opportunities through the department. And it is through NDA, it is not through USDA. So We're trying to make the process as easy as possible on them. And so please reach out to your communities and encourage anybody to apply to those opportunities. That is pretty much it for COVID. Part of this summer usually consists of travel to various policy meetings and things like that. Of course, all of those have now been done virtually, but the meetings are still happening. One of the meetings that I attended was, of course, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture meeting, which is all of my peers from state departments of agriculture across the country get together and talk about high-level policy issues. And one of the policy issues that we're currently discussing and that we are heavily involved in is working with USDA to increase the amount of funding that's coming for processing into the Western states. And so myself and my colleagues are really working with USDA and encouraging them to include increased amount of funding in the next fiscal budget to support the processing industries that currently exist, but also to increase the amount of processing facilities that are potentially existing now. So we're working together to do that. And I just want to also say that we wrapped up our budget. It was due on September 1st, and we have that completed. And that was a huge effort for those last 2 months, but we got it done. And we're looking forward to presenting that to you, hopefully at the next board meeting. So unless you have any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you so much, Chairman Anderson.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Director Ott. And do we have any questions for Jennifer before we let her sit back and have the rest of the crew bring their updates to us? Dr. Spratling?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'd like to ask the director. It says here that you met with Congressman Titus's office regarding feral and wild horses. Was there any update there that we should hear about? Any different direction that we might be going?
Thank you, Dr. Spratling. No, it was mostly an educational meeting about some of the efforts that we had done as a department, education between, wild horses versus the department's feral horses, and how we could potentially work together to create funding solutions for both groups of animals. And so it was mostly an educational meeting.
Any other questions for Director Ott? All right. Thank you, Jen. We'll move on to...
Varlin does have a question.
Oh, Varlin. Go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just a comment. There's a wild horse in Fertility, Wyoming in October that some of us are going to go to if you're interested. I can get you the information, anybody that wants to go.
Chairman, we have that information. We can distribute it to the board if you'd like.
That would be great. Thank you.
Make a note here and I'll get it to you.
All right. We'll move on to item number 5, planned industry. Item 5A for our board update with Ashley.
Good morning. For the record, Ashley Jepson. I'll go over kind of what some general data on the last year of activities, what we know in terms of program potential impacts specific to COVID. Some of it's much to come. So as we get more updates on that, we'll make sure that that stuff's included in your future reports. But we tried to capture that as much as possible for the time being. So some of the pending matters of significance, we submitted a state plan in June of 2020. Several of the areas we weren't entirely sure if USDA would accept, but we definitely wanted to see where we could have some measures in place that were favorable to industry. Basically, the response we got back was no on several of them. So we're having to go back to USDA, work on making sure we're meeting minimum requirements and make sure that in those specific regulatory areas that it's incorporated into NAC. So it's definitely been a little bit of a race since they've released their interim final rules for the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018. So it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge over the last year. So we actually did submit an NAC workshop notice. We held a workshop at the end of August, and we're hoping to move forward with a regulation adoption hearing at the end of September. Our intent with these regulations are to meet minimum federal standards. I want to emphasize that. But some of the areas that we received specific feedback from USDA where clarification was needed or flat out modifications had to do with some of the bullets that are in your report. So for instance, one of them being for any varieties that test greater than 0.5% THC for the interim final rules, they consider this a negligent violation. And this is problematic in that if there are 3 negligent violations within a 5-year period for these regulations, we have to deem that certificate holder as ineligible for up to 5 years. So the implications are significant. We did submit a comment with concerns to USDA during the public comment period and made sure to convey this opportunity as well to industry. We didn't have this specific area encompassed in our state plan because to our knowledge, USDA was reevaluating this piece. And, you know, there was slight suggestion that it may be modified, but in conversing with USDA, they were quite clear that until there is a formal change, that expectation needs to be in place, which would need to be in our regulations. So what we're trying to do is if there is a change, we're just referencing CFR in the NAC that we're hoping to move forward and adopt. One of the other concerns with this as well is a 15-day window from the time of sample to harvest. This can be a very tight window, and it can be challenging in terms of resampling, but we're just to make sure that we have a state plan, we're able to have a program moving forward after October 31st. We're going to do whatever needs to be done to make sure that we can have a program. So we still are providing resampling, and we'll continue to do that for any crops that fail to see, you know, if there is a chance that another representative sample showed that their crop was within the compliance criteria. So we'll keep doing that in hopes that we can get things through. Okay, so just general update on what's going on with hemp. We do have some, oh, and I'm sorry, one other thing. One of our procedural changes that will go into effect either upon the acceptance of our state plan by USDA, which will not happen until regulation adoptions go into place, or October 31st, which is when those state plans have to be in place, is our sampling method. We've been doing equal parts stem leaf to equal parts flower to show representative uses of the plant, but the interim final rules do specify exclusively flower. We tried to propose this as an alternative for sampling, and we submitted this in our state plan in hopes that they would accept it, and USDA said no. Basically, it has to be exclusively flower. So we will be moving forward with an exclusively flower sampling method once we have an approved state plan. In the event that USDA provides extensions, we will definitely look at whether we can continue with this method up until we're required to move forward with exclusively flower. But for the time being, the response we've gotten from USDA is that it needs to be flower exclusively. Our seed team is continuing to work extensively with BLM, NDOW, Forest Service to try to come up with some better strategies for engaging producers to be able to provide locally sourced seed for restoration type projects, so native seed. We did apply for a grant to provide some support to really provide technical assistance to producers on this, which would include web page development with all the research that's coming forward on varietals that do well here, that, you know, give producers the resources that they need to be successful. So we're going to keep, we've been continuing these collaborations, and we're going to continue to move forward and do so. And we're looking at what we can come up with to try to create a potential market for Nevada instead of just sourcing these native seeds externally. And by native, we are really looking at any seeds that perform well in general. For plant, a lot of great things have been going on with our plant pathology program. We have been accepted as a National Plant Detection Network approved lab. So we do diagnostic services. Any samples from the nation can come into our lab and we'll provide those services. And we're one of 70. But the fact that our lab is recognized, meets those standards and criteria, and is involved in that is actually really exciting. And it has allowed us to secure additional funds to provide that service, which you saw later in our report. But that's a great kudos to the great work that our plant pathology team is doing. Now they really, the National Plant Detection Network, anything of national significance, they're geared at doing rapid identification and rapid reporting so that that information is getting out to industry and appropriate responses to these potential harmful diseases are being addressed. With that, over the last year, we've done 15 first detections of new diseases. We've had 3 peer-reviewed publications. So our team really works closely with other states in identifying some of these new plant pathogens of significance and trying to get information out there so we can start to work to address some issues. Let's see. You guys can see all the other statistics as well. 2,600 diagnoses. They've been busy without a doubt. We actually increased our diagnostics 100%. And let's see, sorry, what was, and as I mentioned before, we did receive a 38% jump in federal funds to support our lab. I'm sure many of you heard the unsolicited seeds that have been received in folks' mail. We definitely have been extensively involved with that, along with APHIS. We pushed out several press releases on how to handle these situations. We've been working with other states and, as mentioned, USDA in addressing some of the challenges. We received just shy of about 300 notifications of unsolicited seed that had been received. From what we've heard at this point, they believe it's just a scam to basically bolster reviews for specific sellers. It's a fairly common scam, but the fact that states received thousands upon thousands of seed, it definitely got recognition. To our knowledge, they haven't been there hasn't been anything of significance found within those packets that would be of concern. But as we hear more, we will let you know. But their consensus is that it was a type of review scam. In terms of allium crop inspections, they thankfully this year we did not find any white rot, but we did have 2 fields with extensive infestations for stem and bulb nematode. Our staff do extensive sampling and analysis for stem and bulb nematode to assess where there are potential concerns and to make sure that that seed isn't continuing to be distributed throughout the chain. For entomology, our survey program definitely was impacted in response to COVID-19. Getting staff hired, some of the travel limitations, similar things as what we reported before. But now we've been able to secure more staff. We have placements out, and despite that challenge, we've still had 6,000 placements throughout the state. So definitely responding where we can. We did see a slight decline. We did see a significant decline in terms of physical specimens identified, but we are seeing quite a shift in how samples are submitted. We're seeing more of them submitted through text messages, emails, and this was even before COVID-19. So you can see in the report, we received an extra approximately 160 sample or 160 samples through this channel than what we did before. It's not necessarily ideal, but our entomologists can do quite a bit with images. And again, a huge kudos to them, 52,000 identifications over the last year. So our survey team is really doing an excellent job. During our last board report, I had mentioned that there were extensive blue alfalfa aphid issues this year, and there had been a Section 18 request to use a product that hadn't formally been approved for this use. The Section 18 has now been approved, so in the future, during next growing season, when these issues are encountered, they'll have that additional option to use a pesticide product called Safina. We weren't the only state that had submitted that request, so definitely an ongoing issue. We did see, as you can see in the numbers, we did see quite a good jump in our registration of fertilizer products compared to calendar year 2019. And so we're continuing to see that program increase. Our pesticide education and enforcement program, they do the disposal and container recycling program for pesticide waste. So they can drop off their containers, and we have a cooperative agreement that allows for the containers to be picked up and recycled. So you can see from the numbers, it was quite extensive in terms of the increase. And in fact, we're looking at finding a way to increase our storage capacity in our Las Vegas office because it's not meeting our needs for the volume that we're receiving. So that's a great thing to see that this program is being so successful and people are continuing to take advantage of it. For NAC 555-430, wood destroying pest inspection reports have to be submitted. In the past, we've had the antiquated process through paper, and we're really looking at existing platforms for this to be reported online. It would expedite our ability to get out and do routine inspections to confirm the validity of these reports. It would save our staff extensive time. So we will be submitting requests to get an online platform to start doing this, hopefully in FY21. We have seen a slight reduction in the number of licensed pest control businesses, not extensive, about roughly around 100. We don't know if this is directly related to COVID or anything like that. We don't have any of that specific information. It could just be the shift that we see in the industry. And you can see from the numbers reported, it's kind of stayed within that 1,800 range. I did report, in terms of our crops program, I did report during our last board report the significant growth that we've seen in allium production and requests for export inspections. I'm just bringing it to your attention again. We are requesting positions to help offset this, and we will be pursuing fee increase to make sure that we can address the growing industry needs and get the staff needed to meet this demand. It's been a challenge over the last few years in doing that as we've continued to see growth, and then to have such drastic growth as what we experienced in FY20. We want to make sure that we have the staff, because otherwise the export limitations, especially to Canada, our primary receiver, would certainly be limited. As Director Ott mentioned, plant industry is also coordinating some of the CARES Act funds. We did select 2 projects, and I apologize if there's a typo in your report that says 3 projects. We've selected 2 projects at this point in time to help with inventory and distribution challenges. So one of the projects selected, Park Farms. They've been doing community work for several years in producing food and distributing as well. So they were a good fit for this program. They're looking at-risk communities, their extensive reach to tribal areas, and trying to buy out some of the local food and get it to these outlying areas in addition to the, as I mentioned, at risk. Fallon Food Hub as well. Really, they were just looking at, they have a lot of the infrastructure in place for distribution and inventorying, but they needed a refrigerated truck to help expand their reach. So we're excited to see the outcome of these two specific projects. And again, this was very specific to a specific request for application that was released for these cares for the inventorying and distribution challenges. We do have another request for application out providing relief to agricultural businesses that have been impacted. So really, if, again, Director Ott captured some of these things, but we have received applications to help offset some of the housing costs to provide for additional social distancing, personal protective equipment, in addition to some of the crop losses that happened, if they could really paint the picture that it was specific to COVID-19. And we're continuing to get applications in and are working through troubleshooting to get adequate backup so that we can get the money out there to help provide the relief that's needed. A couple of the other areas are where businesses have had to diversify, change their means of packaging, distribution, or whatever it may be to get it out to consumers. That's an area too that we're seeing a lot of interest. And we have secured staff to provide that additional technical assistance to try to make sure people are taking advantage of these resources. I apologize, I didn't group the hemp statistics with my update at the beginning. We have seen a significant drop from FY19 to 20, about 50% of what we experienced in FY19. And I will say FY19 was a pretty big jump in the first place. So our numbers for 2020 were comparable to 2018. Whether this reduction is the fluctuation we're continuing to see in the market, whether it was new grower challenges, federal requirements, as I mentioned, certainly could be contributors, or COVID-19. It's hard to say and limit it to just one of those things. But just wanted to update you guys on what we're continuing to see within that program. As mentioned, our entomology program was definitely impacted. We did see, especially at the beginning of the season, a significant decrease in grasshopper and Mormon cricket surveys, mainly due to the limitation on overnight travel for our employee safety. But since things have continued to die off, and the overall cricket infestations were considered minimal, based on the issues with finalizing that environmental assessment that I talked about last time. Okay. I think that's just about it. And Director Ott mentioned that we're continuing to just open our offices to those that are actually taking the pesticide applicator exams. So that's where we're limited. We're making sure social distancing is taking place and they're on a scheduled basis exclusively. I think there were a number of, it was certainly a bottleneck initially, but we think we've gotten the numbers pretty well under control. And now we're seeing requests that are pretty standard with a normal year. Those are my updates.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ashley. And we'll go ahead and open this up to the board for questions. Do we have any for Ashley before we let her go? Mr. No.
Yes, Ashley, are they still, can we still send samples to the plant pathology lab through the department?
Yes. Yeah, they're still taking samples. If you have specific samples that you want sent, just coordinate. If you've been coordinating with SHUA in the past, we'll arrange to make sure that they're picked up and rapidly identified. But yes, we're still receiving samples.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ashley? And I'll just make one comment. And Ashley, I appreciate you working with the hemp industry. I know there were some points in the last couple of months where there were some from the industry felt that we were being an obstruction to them doing their job and getting approval. And thank you for working with them and helping them understand more clearly that it was really the USDA and their requirements that was causing the stumbling block for us. And thank you for working with them and likewise holding the workshop for them. Any other questions? All right. Well, again, thank you, Ashley. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 6, consumer equitability.
Oh, wait, Ashley still has more.
I'm
She's not
sorry.
done.
I wasn't sure if I
yeah.
needed to be cued. I'm sorry.
No, that's my fault. I'm sorry. Yeah, here I try and cut you off. So let's move on to 5B, purchase order approval to use funds from account 4544-10, assessment for alfalfa seed research for payment to the National Alfalfa Forage Alliance and Western Alfalfa Seed Growers Association.
So this is a pretty standard request that we've been doing every year. Really, it's to provide about $1,500 to these two associations that provide research for the alfalfa industry. They host an annual conference and have representation for seed growers in DC. So we would just like permission to, as we have in the past, to put those funds to paying those dues.
All right. Do we have any questions or concerns about this action item? Is there anyone willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. This is Charlie Frey.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure for the alfalfa seed research association.
All right.
I'll second.
Perfect. So the motion was made by Mr. Frey, second by Mr. Higbee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to 5C, presentation on the budget account 4544 and strategies for engaging Allium seed industry involving project recommendations.
So I have to apologize. I wanted to make sure that we had on the agenda that we were looking at, we currently have a balance of about $120,000 in 4544. And this is a merged account for, formerly for the Alfalfa Seed Association and for the Onion and Garlic Association. So funds that were supposed to be put forward to research projects and promotion of alfalfa, garlic, and onions. Now I hadn't gone through the budget to separate what funds were allocated to each group. And as I have, it looks like it's more exclusively to alfalfa specific research. So I'll preface with that. I just wanted to update you that we would like to continue to engage with former members within these groups that were dissolved in 2017 to get project recommendations where their areas specifically are of concern that they could use research for or promotion so that we can work with potential researchers in putting together a scope, a relative estimate, and then bring that before you for consideration. If there were any other recommendations for engagement, just considering, again, these groups have been dissolved, we are happy to hear that as well. But it looks like the funds are primarily exclusively to alfalfa. So I apologize for that oversight. I was thinking I could get through the budget and just wanted to make sure that it was on the agenda so I could present that. But as I concluded, it looked like more was on one side rather than the other.
All right, we'll open it up to the board. Any questions or comments from the board on this item? All right. right, hearing none. Ashley, now I'll let you go. Thank you for your help. And we'll move on to item 6, consumer equitability, board update with Cadence. Cadence, it looks like you're still muted. Cadence, there you
There
go.
we go. I think Sam's got me unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I was trying not to take control of my own thing and step on Sam, so my apologies. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Cadence Matijevich, Division Administrator for the Department's Division of Consumer Equitability. You have my update report in front of you. I'm not going to necessarily read through the numbers, but do want to give high points on the items that are contained in my report. In our pending matters of significance, you can see information there on our regulation updates. Following your direction at the June 3rd meeting, we did submit to the Legislative Counsel Bureau initial draft regulations for Nevada Administrative Code Chapter 590 pertaining to
Hey, Cadence,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but could we get you to speak up just a little bit louder? It's
Sure.
pretty faint.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is this better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that. Did you need me to repeat anything that I'd said before?
I muted myself. I think we're okay moving on from here unless any of the board members had a concern.
Great. Then I'll continue on with my update with respect to the regulations. So we submitted draft regulations on NAC Chapter 590 to the Legislative Counsel Bureau in June. They were able to refer those to us, back to us in a draft form for public release in mid-August. We released a survey to assist us in determining the economic impact of the proposed regulations and sent out a survey. We sent a notice of the survey to 432 locations, essentially fuel station operators and others involved in the petroleum industry in Nevada. That survey closed on Friday, September 4th. So we are currently in the process of reviewing the responses to that survey and we'll be preparing a small business impact statement for release here in the next couple of weeks and are currently targeting mid-October for the workshop on those regulations and certainly we'll make sure that the board is included in those who receive notice of that workshop and look forward to engaging with the stakeholders in the petroleum industry on those particular regulations. We are still waiting for drafts back from LCB on our proposed updates to the weights and measures regulations. Those two were submitted to LCB in June, but unfortunately we have not received those back from them yet. So we're a little bit off of what our ideal timeline had been for those. We're hopeful that we'll receive them from them soon and similarly begin to engage the public in the small business impact statement process and hopefully get to workshop in November or December on those proposed regulations. And again, we'll be sure to keep the board informed. For our program updates, again, numbers are there on our completion. Our fiscal year 20 numbers are down from prior years, not a big surprise considering we did suspend a great deal of our operations during the early days of the COVID stay-at-home order, and that we have had significant vacancies, 30% vacancy rate in our weights and measures inspector position over the majority of fiscal year 20. So we're hopeful that fiscal year 21 will be a better year from us from a productivity standpoint, and things are looking better for us currently. From an industry impact standpoint, you can see there sort of the outline of our division operations. Both metrology labs are currently open and fully operational. We're conducting delivery and pickup of customer standards entirely outdoors. When we receive customer standards into the lab for calibration, those standards are subject to a 36-hour quarantine. So it has extended the amount of time that it takes for us to provide service to our metrology lab customers. But again, we're taking those precautions to ensure the health and safety of both our customers and our employees. Both fuel labs in Las Vegas and here in Sparks are both open and fully operational. We have chemists in the lab nearly daily. Occasionally, if there's a school shutdown or something and a parent has to attend to a child, we may not have full staffing in the labs, but generally speaking, we have chemists in the lab testing fuels every day. Our volumes are down somewhat, just a little bit, based on inspector ability to conduct inspections in the field safely. But we are seeing a return to normal operation levels in the fuel labs. For the weights and measures inspectors, they have resumed field operations or field inspection operations, primarily conducting operations that are, inspections that take place outdoors. We are doing some indoor inspections in locations where there is not a large public presence. We can do warehouse scales, things of that nature. And with retail businesses, we've been working to try to schedule inspections in hours outside of their public operating hours. So perhaps we're going in to a location at 6 or 7 in the morning when they're not open to the public to be able to conduct inspections on scales and other devices in retail locations to keep them current. We're, I hope, about 3 weeks away from completing our livestock scale inspection season. This was a particularly challenging season for us from an equipment standpoint. We had a number of unanticipated equipment failures this year that put us a little bit off of our schedule. We are at this point down to only one set of fully functional equipment, and so we are sharing that between the Sparks and Elko teams. The equipment went to Elko today and will remain there through the end of the month, at which point it will return to Sparks, and we should be able to finish up any reinspection of scales that might not have been within tolerance when we did inspections earlier this year. So I realize that some of you experienced the effects of those equipment malfunctions yourselves, or may have heard from industry members. We are very appreciative of everyone's patience and understanding, and in the off season are going to be looking at the equipment that we have and whether or not we need to be making some adjustments or changes to our equipment to try to better position us to not experience these failures in the future. Director Ott talked about conferences and meetings. The weights and measures community similarly has been holding meetings virtually. The Western Weights and Measures Association will be hosting its annual business meeting and review of regulations coming up at the end of this month. And certainly CE staff will be participating in that. I actually will be chairing the Laws and Regulations Committee for the Western Weights and Measures Association this year, and our Weights and Measures Inspector 4, Kip Blauer, will be serving as a member of the Specifications and Tolerances Committee. So certainly Nevada will be well recognized, and we'll have a great opportunity for participation in that meeting as we try to keep things moving forward for regulations in the weights and measures and petroleum technology world virtually this year. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my update report. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you or the committee members may have.
Thank Thank you.
Board members, excuse me.
Do any of the board members have questions for Cadence? All right. Unless you didn't unmute yourself, I'll just say thank you very much for reaching out to industry. Cadence, you guys did a fantastic job. I actually had calls from industry saying, wow, that was impressive. They actually contacted us, and so far the responses that I've heard likewise were in support of what you're doing there with NAC Chapter 590. So thank you for reaching out. You guys did a fantastic job. I do have one question. As far as response, what does it look like on the percentage of people that actually responded back to you?
Thanks for the input, Mr. Chairman, and for the question. For the record, Cadence Matievich, unfortunately, pretty low feedback, individual responses. At last count, we had 13 unique responses to the survey. But I will say some of the feedback that we received, not just on the survey, but through our engagement with the stakeholders, in many cases, we're engaging with industry groups, the Western States Petroleum Association and the Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association, who have hundreds, if not thousands of members in some of those cases. And so while the individual survey response numbers were somewhat low, I do feel like we've gotten good, robust feedback from industry in that initial outreach. And certainly we've heard from many of the individual respondents and from the industry groups that they're looking forward to participating in the workshop process. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have more voices as we continue through the process, but unfortunately at this point, not a lot of individual responses.
All right, well, thank you. And like you said, I've got a feeling just by the fact that you connected with those major industry associations that you reached most every operator within our state. So thank you very much for the work.
Thank you.
One more time, I'll open it up to the board before we let Cadence go. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll move on to our next item. So we're at item number 7. Item number 7, administration. We'll go with a board update from Jerry.
Chairman Anderson, this is Jennifer Ott. Deputy Director Conrad could not join us today, so I'm going to do the report if that's okay with you.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds great.
All right, Jennifer Ott, Director for the Department of Agriculture, for the record. We're going to just go briefly over the for the administration division. And I'm waiting on Sam to pull it up here. All right, so with the CARES funding that was allotted to the department through the state allocation of CARES funding, we were able in the department to also hire a few staff members. This is for a short-term basis as the funding expires December 30th. But we were able to hire a position that was completely dedicated to increasing the communication on the amount of funding that's out there, not just from the department or USDA, but all areas of funding that might be of assistance to our agricultural and food communities. And this person we have on staff now is providing technical assistance not only to the opportunities available, but are there to help walk through application processes and answer any questions that there might have. So again, I would really appreciate any word that we can get out through our board members to, please let people know that this position exists and that you can call and get any assistance that you need, whether it's wondering if that you're eligible for funding, or you have a question about an application, or any questions that have to do with this funding and this assistance. This position is available to producers. I'm excited to present to you that NDA is now considered a project partner to the Women's Farm to Food Accelerator Project. This is a project that had been previously run by the state of Oregon, and it was a project that assisted women farmers and ranchers and processors to either start up their businesses, diversify their businesses, find new markets, and with the NASDA Foundation and the state of Oregon, we were able to sign on as a partner using federal funds. And so this program will begin, and we'll be getting the word out shortly about recruiting for women participants in our food and ag communities that would potentially want to participate in this project. And it really is a great opportunity to have an opportunity to diversify your business and meet some people that are doing the same thing that you are doing. And so it's a great opportunity, and we're pretty proud to participate in a project like this. The trade coordinator and team have been incredibly busy with their work in marketing Nevada farmers and ranchers to not only trade professionals, but to countries across the world, and getting the word out about Nevada products. And so typically the trade coordinator is traveling constantly to other countries to spread the word, but even that work has come to a halt, and everything is done virtually. And so it's amazing what you can do via Zoom nowadays. And so there's trade meetings happening almost on a weekly basis. They were able to present to Nevada distilleries to Canadian buyers to open up some market opportunities for those distilleries. And there'll be more specialty beverage missions taking place this fall. There was a mission virtually for South Korea's, where we were able to talk about a Nevada company, Pacific Cheese, that participated. And also working with some of our Western states to provide more retail promotion for our products in Mexico. So those products that are currently already for sale in Mexico, we were able to assist with more promotion of those products to sort of increase their visibility and increase their business that is done in Mexico. Again, always this is meeting season where we're able to catch up with colleagues around the United States. And so we were able to attend those. And our team also just recently held a education seminar for food and ag companies that are interested in either diversification or exporting. And so it was an introduction seminar or new information seminar. And we had several speakers from USDA and SBA, SBDC, economic development organizations that were able to participate and assist food and ag members to talk about exporting and the benefits of exporting. And of course, many of you have also received the economic surveys. That data is being crunched currently so that we can create our economic analysis report. This is different. We have gone directly to producers to receive economic information instead of relying on purchased databases, which always seem to show discrepancies and didn't accurately represent the state. And so in our effort to get a better picture of the food and ag industry in Nevada, we released these surveys and had great responses back. So we're continuing to crunch that data, and that'll be available in an analysis report in the winter. So, and then you can see here a list of communications that have been released by the department, mostly either advertising something that we're doing, promoting something that the department is doing, or in response to media inquiries. So with that, Chairman, that concludes the the administration division report.
All right, thank you, Jen. Open it up to the board. Do any board members have any questions for Jennifer? We'll move on to the next item. So we have items 7B through 7F. So 5 action items. These are all policy revisions. And Director Ott, I'm assuming you'll be taking over this as well?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
This is Jennifer Ott for the record. We have 5 policy revisions in front of the board today. Again, just like previous board meetings, this is an effort to update our policies and make them true policies where the procedures will be handled by the department and the overriding policies per NRS 561, of which is under the purview of the Board of Agriculture, as they will establish the policies of the Department of Agriculture. So the first in front of you today is the personal appearance policy. And if you want to take a moment to read that, or would you like me to read it, Chairman?
You know what? Go ahead and read it for us if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, just the 2 sentences here is the personal appearance policy shall ensure employees maintain a personal appearance that meets the responsibilities and expectations of their job and the duties performed. The policy shall also ensure a balance of professionalism, safety, and comfort in the work environment.
All right. And what I was thinking along these lines, because typically what we've done is gone through all the policies and we approve them in one lump. I would say if any of the board members, as we're moving through these items, if you have any concerns, objections, questions, let's bring them up at that point and we will separate them out. Otherwise, my goal is to approve it all in one group. So with that being said, do we have any questions in regard to the personal appearance policy? Okay, so we'll move on to 7C, the Department Ethical Behavior Policy Revision.
All right, ethical behavior policy, policy number 1.8. Again, as the board establishes the policy of the department. And this policy includes the ethical behavior policy shall ensure employees maintain standards of conduct necessary to ensure the integrity and impartiality of government, free from conflicts of interest between public duties and private interests of state and local public officers and employees.
Okay, and once again, does the board have any questions or concerns about this policy revision? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to 7D, a Department Employee Termination Policy Revision.
And policy number 1.5 includes the employee recruitment, hiring, and termination policy shall ensure the recruitment, hiring, and termination of classified employees meet all applicable federal and state laws. The policy shall also ensure the recruitment, hiring, and termination of unclassified positions meet all applicable federal and state laws and are directed by and serve at the discretion of the director per NRS 284.147. For unclassified service, heads of departments may employ deputies and employees necessary to fill unclassified positions and accompanying salaries.
Okay, board members, any concerns with this item? Item 7E. Oops, I'm sorry, that was 7D, sorry. So we're on to 7E if we don't have any questions or concerns. And that is Department Recruitment and Hiring Policy Revision.
Chairman Anderson, that got combined with the termination policy, so it's right here. It's all in.
Okay. All right then.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Sam, can you confirm? So item 7D and item 7E are rolled into item 7D?
Correct.
Okay, so all the wording that we're seeing here is applicable to both action items.
To D and E, yes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because it refers to both. Okay, So then, before we move on to the last one, any questions or concerns under item 7D, Department Employee Termination Policy Revision, or 7E, Department Recruitment and Hiring Policy Revision? All right, then we'll move on to 7F, Department Employee Development and Training Policy Revision.
Thank you. Policy 1.7, the Employee Training and Development Policy shall support and encourage appropriate job-related training designed to promote the maximum proficiency of employees in the performance of their assigned duties and to meet the needs and goals of state service, applicable federal requirements, and the department.
Okay. Board members, any questions, comments, concerns about action item 7F, Department Employee Development and Training Policy Revision? All right, hearing no concerns, then I would entertain a motion, and the way that we would want to word it is to approve action items 7B through 7F. Anyone willing to jump in with the motion? Mr. No.
Paul No for the record, and I move that we do approve the action items. I'm sorry. That is action items 7B through 7F.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Mr. Higbee, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Higbee. So we have a motion by Mr. No, second by Mr. Higbee. All those in favor of approving the policy revision 7B through 7F. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we're moving on to item 8, animal industry, with 8A, the board update from Mr. Ferris. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Doug Ferris, Animal Industry Division Administrator. I think Sam's loading. All right, we have our report up there. I'll start off and I'll kind of go over the high points, and then if anybody has any questions, answer them to the best of my ability. So starting with some of our pending matters of significance, effective July 1st, the department, we transferred the food safety program. This includes craft foods, laboratory services, and the dairy inspection program. That was all transferred from the food and nutrition division to animal industry division. So this aligns the division programs and furthers our move towards a strategic plan, becoming a more customer focused organization and creating a cohesive organization. Our Elko Enforcement Officer 1 position is currently attending the Post Academy in Carson City. So far, good reports back. So we hope to, upon his passing, we can get him back out and get him in the field in Elko. In addition to that, we had a vacant Ely position that was open for an Enforcement Officer 2. That position's actually been put on hold through FY20 due to the general fund budget constraints. Are we good, Sam?
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay. All right. Moving on. I know during our last update, we provided the information as far as the letter of intent that was requested during the 2019 legislative session. Since that has been provided to LCB, we did attach a copy and provided it to all the board members for your review. And then also, in talking with legislative on that matter, the division has submitted 8 NAC regulation recommendations. Those have been submitted to LCB, as well as 2 that we have today following our update. Partnership activities, wildlife services. We continue to work with the new state director, Mark Ono. We actually have another meeting upcoming. We've had several meetings with Mr. Ono, and we see this as a positive. I think we're moving in a good direction with our park program and the wildlife services program. So we look forward to that. USDA APHIS staff actually applied for. There was an additional grant of $4,500, and we applied for that and were successfully awarded that grant. That applies to purchasing more EID tag applicators and scanning ones. And then the department, once we receive those, will make those available to practitioners and industry members when they request them from us. Moving on to Wild Horse Connection. They continue to provide their monthly reports and respond to calls for service as far as respond to public safety issues. The number of calls that they reported for fiscal year 20 equal 500 calls. American Wild Horse Campaign, the department did sign a second non-exclusive cooperative agreement for the fertility control program with American Wild Horse. As of FY20, we had reports of 1,118 mares that had received fertility control, and they have documented a total of 4,200 individually identified horses in the Virginia Range area. In the program updates for our commercial feed, we currently have 102 accounts registered for FY20. Livestock enforcement, I won't go over all of those, but the 3 enforcement officers, we have all of their numbers there as far as performance throughout FY20 and the projects they worked on. Livestock identification, staff for FY20, staff completed over 68,000 brand inspections in excess of 445,000 animals. And this did include the numbers from the 2 public livestock auctions in Fallon. Brand renewals were mailed out, and for the most part, we're through the big bulk of it. So far we've reviewed or renewed over 3,000 brands, and there's almost 1,500 that are still pending that haven't been renewed. So those will go through the 1-year process before they're lost to record. Staff have issued 346 new brand registrations and completed 278 brand transfers through FY20. Division received 3,072 livestock assessments for 2019 and approximately 3,900 for the 2018 year. So, and 2020 has now been open, so we're receiving those beginning July 1. So those will be reported on our next board update. We had 230 applications for livestock movement permits. There were 159 applications sent to the department, which totaled 2,668 permits. And so just some quick calculations out of that, because we received $25 for any amount of permits that somebody wants to request. So we're currently at about $1.49 in revenue received for that, for the staff time and products that were used to supply those. Division currently has 302 agricultural licenses issued, and then moving on to Virginia Range calls, emails, texts, everything that we receive in the office there. It's in excess of 430 for the FY20 year that staff responded to and received. Predatory animal and rodent control. The primary species that were addressed during the FY20 year were 41% ravens, 41% coyotes and 51% ravens. And then the other 8% were primarily European starlings, and there were lions and some feral swine. The park staff provided public outreach to over 1,900 individuals during this last year, and there were 38 samples taken from predatory animals that were submitted for testing. The total animals that were reported and verified were 121 calves, 186 chickens, 20 ducks, 8 goats, and 401 sheep. There were also a couple companion animals that were injured and 7 that were actually reported as killed. Moving on to veterinary medical services, the lab for FY20 performed over 20,000 procedures, totaling in excess of 28,000 tests during FY20. Division staff did submit a reclassification request for the Elko biologist position. We're going to reclassify that to a microbiologist so we can get the lab up and running again. But that was actually denied due to general fund and current COVID-19 situations with general funding. So that position will actually be on hold through FY20, and hopefully we'll be able to revisit that beginning FY21 or FY22, excuse me. Then moving on to the dairy program, with that now coming under Animal Industry Division. Inspection and frequency requirements were met throughout this year. Inspection staff conducted 94 food manufacturing facility inspections and 109 dairy farm inspections. There were 80 store checks completed, and of the 14 milk pasteurizers in the state, 58 equipment tests were conducted. 47 warning and compliance notifications and 6 cease and desist orders were issued. 9 complaints were received by the program, and they were investigated by staff. Meat and poultry program inspector conducted 11 facility inspections. During this time, staff collected over 2,700 milk samples and 6,900 water samples that were tested at the food safety lab. And in total, the food safety lab performed in excess of 4,600 tests on milk samples that were collected and submitted by our staff and inspectors. The audit services, which is a part of the program for the dairy food safety program, they did have some downtime when COVID-19 hit. Some of the staff ended up staying at home there for a period before we could get through everything, get things set up, and get back into the field. During this time, during the FY20 year, they completed surveys and general store investigations for 629 locations. There were 17 new applications registered with dairy distribution, and this equaled approximately over 14,000 in new revenues through the dairy program. Dairy distribution program currently has 220 licensed accounts, and also audit staff have completed 22 investigative remittance and closeout audits for FY20. And then moving on to our industry impact section, we actually, during this portion, we wanted to go ahead and discuss the current trichomoniasis status in the state. So at this, I'm going to I'll actually introduce Dr. Mitchell, who's our Nevada State veterinarian. And she's going to provide some information that we have, and I'll assist her in any way if need be during this. And then we'll have questions too as well.
Thank you, Doug, and welcome, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Chairman, this is Boyd Spratling.
Yes, Dr. Spratling, go ahead.
I just had a question on, since they've assumed the department has assumed the dairy inspection program, where are those, in what laboratory are those milk samples being tested?
Mr. Chairman, Doug Ferris for the record. Dr. Spratling, we actually have, the dairy already had a lab located in the Sparks office that was set aside for themselves. So we basically have, along with the animal disease lab, just way, then we have the dairy laboratory. And we also, with this merger, Laura Morrow, who's the lab supervisor, she's actually taken over supervision of that dairy laboratory as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to Dr. Mitchell? Okay, so once again, welcome aboard, and it's all yours.
Hi, thank you so much. For the record, Amy Mitchell, Animal Industry. Currently, for trichomoniasis, we are working on a program to streamline the process that we're doing right now as far as switching over to pooled sampling. I know that's been a concern in the industry for a while. Plans right now are aiming towards the first week of December to launch that. It's going to take some work as far as getting some information out to all of the producers and all of the veterinarians. But we have been working on that, rewording some of the language and getting out our testing plan and making sure we're ready in the lab for all of that come December. And we currently have 2 properties still that we have on hold orders. We have gotten pretty much everybody into compliance, and we're continuing to work on that through the fall season. But that seems to be going well so far. Nothing else new to report other than, like I said, we're trying to launch this plan to switch to pooled sampling, kind of for the benefit of the industry, but also for the benefit of the producers to make testing a little bit easier and hopefully quicker in the process.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Question.
Mr. Higby?
Yes, through you, Chair. Could you give a brief overview of this kind of a 30,000-foot overview of how the new trich testing program will function?
So the plan would be, is that me? Sorry, feedback. The plan, again, there's a couple of different things. I know there's been some issues with communication with veterinarians in the field. So my plan is to streamline the communications process to get word out to all of the accredited veterinarians in the state. Let them know that this is our process going forward. Do they want to be aware of our trich updates, our positive and exposed herd updates, in case they are seeing ranchers that they need to manage in that respect. We want to get out a email list for all that information. So as we go forward in the next season, especially, we can get information out pretty quickly, but also provide an easy, fast way of those veterinarians getting in contact with us to report positives also. So that's one part of the plan. 2, again, is making sure that we get our lab up and running so we can do those pooled samples as they come in groups of 5. So it hopefully will be more cost effective for producers to test. So it may help with compliance as well, because it's easier and hopefully it'll be cost efficient to do the PCR sampling versus the culture that I know a lot of veterinarians are still doing. PCR is more effective. It's a faster process. We currently use it to get our quarantine and hold orders off of hold and quarantine because it is more accurate. So as soon as we can do the pulling of the samples, I think we'll have more compliance and be able to handle that in the lab pretty well in December.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Boyd Spratling.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Spratling.
I didn't hear, there was a little bit of, you got muffled there for just a moment. Did you talk about accepting pool results from other approved labs?
That is what we're planning on doing. If they are approved over state lines and they're pooling, we are considering accepting those pooled samples, as long as they're from accredited.
Okay. And that's appreciated, because in the past that hasn't been the case, and admittedly the Nevada lab has can decide when and how they want to do their pooled samples, but there are other pooled potential out there. So I'm glad you feel that way. And secondly, the confidentiality, is that going to be addressed by the DAG, or are you going to address that?
Is that in respect to the exposed and infected herds?
Yes.
We have consulted with them previously. I know this issue came up before. We are able to share that information with veterinarians as far as exposed and infected herds. And I know that there's concern because I think we spoke before about this too, but when you have a producer that travels or a veterinarian that's mobile that travels pretty long distances, we may not be aware that you are managing those ranches that could be infected, even though it's a greater distance. So my plan would be, again, on this email, kind of like a listserv, any veterinarian who is large animal and accredited in that pool that wants to be a part of the process. There will be some that don't trick test or don't want to be aware, but the ones that want to be participants, I don't have a problem getting that information out. We have consulted with the DAG and we are allowed to do that information, to give that information out.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Mitchell? Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll move on to 8B. This is an action item, a proposed revision of NAC 571 to update language regarding brucellosis vaccinations. And I'm assuming this is you, Doug?
Yes, I can take this part. For the record, Doug Ferris. This language update actually, what was suggested working with our animal disease lab and state veterinarian was to update the language in 571.355, vaccination of female cattle or bison before change of ownership. The language change, as you can see, is to change from where it previously stated vaccinated for brucellosis. We would request to have the language changed to official calf hood vaccinates, OCVs, regarding brucellosis.
All right, thanks, Doug. Do we have any questions from the board on this action item? Okay, if we do not have any questions or concerns, do we have a motion? Dr. Spratling, you're still muted. You're there you go.
We're pushing buttons there. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the vaccination of female cattle for before change of ownership in NRS 561.105 and under what NAC is it? It is NAC. Never mind.
NAC 571.
NAC 571.355.
All right, thank you. We have a motion from Dr. Spratling. Second?
Second from Heather.
All right, thank you. So motion made by Dr. Spratling, second by Ms. Lackey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And
There's one opposition there.
I'm sorry, one more time.
There's one opposition there. I'm opposed to that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So that's Mr. Higbee is voting nay on this item. Okay, thank you, Mr. Higbee. And we'll move on to it. The motion does pass still. And with that, we'll move on to 8C, proposed revision to NAC 573 to update language and increase licensure fee to operate livestock sales and auctions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Doug Ferris. So this is proposed language to update NAC 573. This is directly related to during the 2019 legislative session, there was actually the language was added to that for, we previously had public livestock sales, but did not have annual sale of livestock. That was actually, went through NRF and was approved during the last session. And so this is just to update the language to include annual sales of livestock under this NAC, and also the increased fee for the renewal of licenses.
Okay, thank you. And open this up to the board. Any questions for Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, Commissioner Higbee, through you, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Higbee.
What's the current fee on the livestock sales now, and how's it determined?
Mr. Chair, through you, for the record, Doug Ferris, the current fee is $150 annually, which was set, I would have to look back to see when that was set previously, but that was for all public livestock auctions, which we only currently have 2 in the state. And so now this will apply across the board to all public livestock auctions and the annual sales that only operate for no more than 2 consecutive days a year. So more of like bull sales, horse sales, things such as that.
Would it include like your video sale auctions too, that are held in Winnemucca? And
for the record, Doug Ferris, it does not include video sales. Per statute, the animals have to be gathered at a location in order to be required to have a public livestock auction. So those are not those don't qualify and fall under it. It's more of some, we have the snaffle bit futurities, things like that. Some of the bucking horse sales and sales down in Las Vegas, it would apply to those and the public livestock auctions as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Doug?
Chairman Anderson, if anybody has questions for Doug, Tim had a question for Dr. Mitchell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and hold on this, and we'll go back to Dr. Mitchell once we finish this item. Is Dr. Spratling, did I hear you had a question?
No, sir. I can't hit my unmute button right now.
Okay. I guess we'll leave the control up to Sam and let her mute you or unmute you if you'll just wave to us when you want to speak. And going back to questions on this action item, any other questions for Doug? All right. As I said, this is an action item. So if we have no other questions, do we have anyone that's willing to make a motion? All right.
Mr. Chairman, it's Boyd Spratling. I move that we accept the proposed amendment for NAC Chapter 573.
All right. We have a motion made by Dr. Spratling. Do we have a second?
Mr. Higbee, I'll second. Go ahead.
Sorry. Mr. Higbee, that was you?
Or somebody else. It don't matter. But yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. So the motion made by Dr. Spratling, second by Mr. Higbee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed. Okay, and this one does pass as well. From HOMA, good morning.
Oh, wait, Paul, Tim had a question for Dr. Mitchell.
You're right, I'm sorry. Tim, are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dan. Sorry, Dr. Mitchell. I was trying to get off mute, but I never could get figured out how to get in there. But anyways, I would like to know what the status of the revisions that were sent in by the Cattlemen's Association. How you looked at those, and where are we on that stuff?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the
The the status of the revisions on the trichomoniasis regulations? I was wondering how we were with in regards to the hold order and enforcement.
I know we have been back and forth with those regulations. I'm not sure where they are in the legal process yet. I'm not sure if, but we have been using, with respect to the testing to get off hold and quarantine, we've been using those guidelines, and we haven't had an issue so far this season with that. Sorry, I'm having trouble.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Stratton.
Dr. Mitchell, one of the concerns in those suggested proposed regulation changes that came from the Cattlemen's Association was that how a person is defined as being put onto a hold order. And the change was, I think the wording originally was that the neighbor had to be exposed to a positive bull, which is almost impossible that's a high bar to meet, if not impossible. And the proposed change was to make that a neighboring herd, which is that is defined already in NAC. So I think that's a concern, is how are you going to define who was put on to the hold order?
So yes, sorry, I'm having audio problems. Excuse me. Yes, so that regulation is what we're working on as far as if they're an exposed herd going with the NAC, whether they're sharing a common fence, whether they share common grazing areas, they would be considered exposed in those situations.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Mitchell? All right. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 9, food and nutrition, with the board update from Homa. Good morning.
Good morning, Homa Administrator for Food and Nutrition Division. I start with the division overview. USDA extended several waivers, including parent pickup, non-congregate meals, and mealtime meal pattern through June 30th, 2021. Also, USDA extended a waiver for requirement for monitoring child and adult care program, National School Lunch Program, and Summer Food Program through September 30th, 2021. NDA also submitted a couple of waivers on behalf of our school districts and our sponsors. One is request for at-risk school after-school program to allow community organizations to serve meal and snack at the end of the school day without requiring participation in enrichment activities. We also requested for districts a waiver for districts and schools to operate summer feeding program instead of National School Lunch Program, and ask them to extend that through 2021 school year. Last week, the nationwide waiver was extended through December 2021. And we're waiting to see if later on they can extend it for the entire year. Excuse me. We also received about $55 million in CARE Acts for our existing program to reimburse our school and organization for child and adult care food program, summer food program, and National School Lunch programs. In terms of partnership, our community nutrition team is collaborating with the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services Division of Public and Behavioral Health. We now have a member on our early childhood obesity steering committee, and the goal of the committee is to reduce childhood obesity among young children by increasing the centers and child care centers and daycare centers that are operating our child and adult care food programs. With our program updates with food distribution, our our emergency food assistance programs continues to provide food to our household food to our individual and families in need, and we are still operating on a drive-through model to maximize contact, and also we extended the signature waiver through December 30th, 2020. And both Food Bank of Northern Nevada and Tree Square have seen increased needs for food, and our program, our TFAC program, has been very crucial resource in providing food for our needy population. And as you see, statewide, April through June 30th, this program has distributed 5.8 million pounds of food to families in need. Also, we got the CARE Act funding, and we were awarded $6 million, and we awarded those through 2 grants to address food insecurity in Nevada. One is Nevada CARES Community Food Response Grant. We awarded about a total of $2.8 million to 13 community organizations to expand access to food and delivery, and also improve their food distribution infrastructure. Likewise, to Nevada CARES Food Security Initiative Act, we awarded another $2.8 million to our 2 food banks to also increase home delivery and expand their operation and infrastructure needs. Our summer food service program completed 9 administrative reviews this summer using Zoom, and it was a virtual, and it was very well received by our stakeholders. And I highlighted this because we were the first state in Western region that utilized the virtual process and to conduct these offsite reviews, and we shared that to our counterparts in Western regions, and now they're implementing in the same process. And also we shared it with our school nutrition and child and adult care food program teams. The number of meals that has been served through summer food program has significantly increased, because the summer food program is filling the void of the meals served to the needy population that normally is through national school lunch. And I put a comparison there. In 2019, the summer food distributed close to 500,000 meals, and this year we have served over 4 million meals to our population. Our child and adult care food program also completed administrative reviews and offsite monitoring utilizing Microsoft Teams, and that has been also very, very well received. Overall, we saw we couldn't do all the administrative reviews because some of those locations were closed or did not allow anyone in their facilities in spring due to COVID-19. The number of meals served through child and adult care food program is also decreased because some of the centers were closed. But the majority of child care centers and emergency shelters and Head Start program stayed open, and they serve food through summer food service programs, whether through pickup food or delivery. And we served about 1 million less meal compared to last year. And our school nutrition program authorized 12 seamless summer option feeding sites, which is similar to our summer food service program. They were open site. That means they are able to serve any child age 18 or younger both breakfast and lunch in a non-congregate and grab-and-go model. We completed 14 out of 17 scheduled administrative reviews, and the rest have been moved to the next year due to COVID-19. We also released the application for National School Lunch for our schools that are participating in our National School Lunch and Special Meal Program, and we already approved 44 of the 62 existing application, and we have 6 new charter schools that have submitted application to participate in our program. As you see, the number of meal lunches served to date is over 30 million lunches, 18 million breakfasts, 200,000 snacks, and 148 meals. We also reimburse about close to $1.4 million for the fresh fruit and vegetables to our school districts. In terms of industry impact, due to COVID-19 and school closure, school meal program operators were serving about 20 to 40% of the normal volume of meal. Because of this significant reduction in meals served, their revenue is down, and that has been a significant impact on the reserve for school districts, and they are waiting to see if they can get some relief through CARE Act to make up for the loss of revenue. And that concludes my presentation and my report. And please, any question?
Okay, thank you, Homa. Board members, questions for her before we move on? All right, it doesn't look like we have any, but I just want to say what an incredible job that you and your team have done to be able to see a 652% uptick, and you guys are getting the job done. So it's sad that we had to provide that many meals, that there were that many people in need, but thank you guys for stepping up and getting it done. That's incredible.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we'll get ready to move into public comment. And actually, I guess if I could, I'm not sure would be the best time to mention this, but just want to let the board members know of a couple things. One, I'm going to be stepping down. My board term ends, and this is actually my 4th round. And so I'll be coming to the next meeting, but only for a little bit, because what we didn't realize is we did not put this on the agenda. So we did not have the ability to vote for a chairman and a vice chair. And Dr. Spratling, would you care to say where you are in your position as well?
I'm in the same boat. Essentially, I won't be reapplying for a position on the board. And then you and I came on at the same time, so we're the same graduating class that will be leaving the Hill.
And thank you. And as I'm sure most all of you know, Dr. Spratling has been the vice chair. So what that was going to do is actually not have anyone that could call the next meeting or hold the next meeting. So I'm got a feeling that Dr. Spratling and I will at least join for the beginning of your next meeting. But with that being said, please think about if you would be interested in being a chair or vice chair, and likewise, if you don't, who you think would do well in that position, and be ready to nominate them to do so. You might want to have a conversation with them first, just to make sure that they are in agreement with you. But with that being said, what we're going to do is move on to item 10, public comment. And Samantha, do we have any public comment?
Not right now. If anybody does, if you could either raise your hand on the participant on your name. You can do that over there, or if you're joining by phone, you can dial *9. See Mr. Higby.
Yes, Mr. Higby, go ahead.
Under public comment, I'd just like to clarify a little. By requiring that BANG's vaccination, what I've experienced in my operation is, if you sell through Superior or one of the other livestock auctions, the virtual livestock auctions, and they require you to do it on site, you have about a 20 or 30%, they get sick. when you stress them, they're stressed because they've been boosted. You're required to vaccinate for pneumonia and you boost. So they've been vaccinated and boosted, and then you run them across the scales and bangs vaccinate them. They have a tendency, as a higher rate as 20 to 30% of them get sick when they get to the feed yard where they're going. And so the buyer requests that they be allowed to do that when they get to their certified feed yard rather than do it on site. And that's just closing the door to some options is all by doing that.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Higbee.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Spratling?
is it okay if I respond to that concern?
Technically, in public comment, we're not to respond.
Okay, that's fair.
So thank you for asking, though.
Could you call me later? Because I'd really like to know what you think.
Okay.
All right. Go back to you, Samantha. Have we had anyone that indicates they want to make public comment?
I do not. And again, if you're joining by phone, if you press *9, you can let me know. I have nothing.
All right. With that, we'll move on to move on to item number 11, which is adjournment. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for all the work that you guys are doing there at the department. And board members, keep up the good work. Thanks, and you guys have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Paul. Have a good day.
Sir. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.